Well, hello and welcome to April 11th. A dimple on your chin, many hearts you will win. Traditional saying. Well, I don't know if it's a traditional saying, but oh my god, look at the face. Isn't it so cute? Human babies, baby animals, most baby anything. Very cute. And speaking of cute babies, it is time to do something about the strip. As you can see, the soil, which I've been working on for about 2 years now, is done. There's lots of organic material in it. Smells like soil again, feels like soil, acts like soil. Plenty of life in this lovely dirt. So, it's time to start the hardscaping. I've already dug out a little bit here for the brand new raised box. As you see, I have managed to take a few pallets apart, 1.5, I guess, and these pieces are now ready to start getting prepped. That means you brush all the dirt off them and sand them. But here's the thing, they don't need to be sanded completely. They do not need to be perfect. These boards are not going to last forever. I knew that when I bought the pallet, when I actually went and got the pallets, not bought them, and the only thing that it needs to be is clean enough to hold the paint. The paint doesn't necessarily need to stay on them forever because they're not going to stick around forever. They just need to look good for maybe a season or two, long enough so that the soil that I'm putting there will look nice. So, as long as there's no dirt and I don't feel horrific splinters on them, they're good enough. And I'm not even going to sand half of them because the inside, I am not going to put paint on the inside of the box, only the outside. So the nicer looking part will be on the outside. And of course, they only need to hold a minimum of, what, 1 screw. As long as they're held on, they're perfectly good. A couple of staples though, staples need to probably come out. And there are a couple of nails still in there. Here we go. Here's a pretty yucky one. Oh, yeah. If I try painting over this, it's going to be a disaster. I think this is going to be the inside because there's less dirt on this side. But just a quick little brush so I don't clog up all my sandpaper with dirt. There we go. Looks good enough. And I could probably leave this side as is. It's just going to get dirty again anyway. Maybe a little brush. Just to make sure that there aren't any staples or nails hanging around. There we go. Good enough. Alright, I just need to get through this pile now. took me about, I'd say 15-20 minutes just to do this stack. It's good enough to get me started because the babies need to be planted. I've got a bunch of kale upstairs that's just begging for a home, and I'm going to be starting, let's see, spinach, lettuce, other flowers that I'd really like to get into that strip. And I really can't take apart the rest of the fence until I have the boards done. Hashtag reality check. If you think you are the perfect painter and that you'll never make a splash, well, you're wrong. Eventually, something's gonna get on your floor. So put something down. Old towel, old rug, piece of cardboard, something, anything. And this goes especially for us renters. Please, don't get dinked for $120 just because you got a splash of paint on the floor. I have my paint and my trusty wide brush. I got a drill. There we go. And my paint that is a nice light blue. I also have a nail and a hammer. And I'll show you what those are for right now. If you get a gallon of paint, I like to get the gallons from the local restore. This sells them for a really, really cheap price. When you take off the lid, you'll notice all around the edge is just solid. Well, that's not great. As you're wiping your paint here, all the paint is covering this area. Just take a nail and punch some holes. So that when the paint gets in there, it'll drain out. A lot of you probably already know this trick, but for people who haven't painted before, it's not something that necessarily occurs until you go to close the lid and realize it's really hard to get the lid on there with so much dried up paint in your way. This is a squirrel, and this is going to mix my paint for me. It prevents the paint from splashing while I'm mixing. All right. If you have bought paint, discount paint, make sure you mix it absolutely thoroughly. You don't know how long that can's been sitting there, and it could have any number of lumps in it, or the dye could have separated from the base paint. If you mix it, it'll be fine. Just make sure you keep mixing until you get a uniform color after you're done. Oh, and be careful with the squirrel. Yep. Good there. Now we'll go wash this real quick. All right, clean squirrel. You always want to make sure these are clean for the next time, because dried paint on the squirrel is awfully hard to get off. There we go. somewhere to put the finished boards. I'm just gonna leave them there. Should be fine. Yeah. I'm not going to try to do too many at once. Remember, it doesn't have to be perfect. It's good to do a bunch of light layers. It'll last longer. And of course, it'll dry faster if you do a bunch of light layers. Now, if you find that your discount paint is just a little too thick, if it's getting just kind of hard to spread, and you don't know how to thin it, that's okay. Keep a small thing of water nearby, take a very small amount of water on your brush, then dip it in the paint, and it'll be easier to spread. Take a little longer to dry, but that's okay. Just very small amounts of water will do. All right, about 5 minutes later, dry. Time for another coat. This one, just a little bit heavier. Not a lot, don't go nuts. Remember, if you don't have access to pallets, I'll bet you have access to something else. Anything else. Whether it's old shelving units, old furniture you can take apart, cardboard that you can glue together to form a box. Now, cardboard definitely won't last as long as wood. Even if you're going to do a rock wall. Rock walls, nice and solid, and will last you a good long time. All right, coat number 2. All right, I finished the second coat. I'm gonna wash this brush off because I know I'm gonna have to wait 15-20 minutes, and I don't want my brush to dry out while I'm waiting. You can just stick it in the water and leave it there if you really wanted to, but it is easier just to make sure it's clean, dry it off real quick. This brush cost me a whole 50 cents at Bi-Mart here in Oregon, and it's lasted me 3 years doing this. Oh, don't forget to cover your paint too while you're waiting. These all have a third coat. I did my best to get into all little crevices, but and I did do the sides on some, but not all. Now it's entirely up to you how many coats you want to do. Yeah, it's going to take a little while for these to dry. It's entirely up to you how many coats you want to do. It's also entirely up to you how long you want this paint job to last. Do you want this to last a fairly long time? Then take the time and the money to go and get a wood primer to do first before you put down the paint. I did not get a primer because I do not care what this looks like after a bunch of rains. I know this is going to age much faster because there is no primer holding the paint in place just fine. I don't mind. I don't mind that it ages or, you know, gets soggy or whatever. It's fine. It's not supposed to last that long, just long enough. The paint will do. I like it. Now, are you concerned about how smooth it looks? Do you want it to look nicer? These little nail holes can be fixed. Raw, if I can get this, there we go. Can be fixed with some Elmer's wood glue. Well, it doesn't have to be Elmer's. I think Gorilla makes a wood glue too. Any wood glue that dries hard and is sandable and paintable will do. Just take a little bit of glue and here we go. It's coming right in the hole, right in the hole, right in the hole. Fill it up. And little cracks too. One little hole, little hole. Just like that. Wipe off the end of the cap. If you don't wipe off the end of the cap, you're asking for trouble. All right. And you can leave it like that if you want, or smooth it out. It's not going to matter because once this dries, you can sand it, then you can primer it, then you can paint it. And you won't have all these little holes like I have in mine. Another use for wood glue. I have a board that broke. Now, I'm going to use this as one of the bases. So it's going to be on the ground. It doesn't have to be perfect. So I don't have to have a lot of strength in it. And it does go back together. Now, I can't just glue it together and hope for the best. What I'm going to do is I'm going to glue it and then I'm going to screw it together. I'll show you how I do that. Okay, first things first. I have to figure out how long a screw do I need to actually screw this together. It's a fairly long screw. Yep, that looks like it's going to do. It's going to go right through, but not out the bottom. Now, that's not to say that going out the bottom is going to be bad if you're using this piece as a base layer. If you're using this piece as a base layer, it's not going to matter if the screw's coming out the bottom and you're using a super long screw. But if you're using a random piece that you're putting back together as part of an upper layer, it may interfere with what you're trying to build. So just take a couple of screws and figure out how long it's going to take. One screw should be sufficient for this project. There are several ways that you can do this. You can take these two pieces, glue them together, wait for the glue to dry, then make a pilot hole, and then put the screw in through both pieces. It's pretty important that you put a pilot hole in there before you put the screw in there. Otherwise, the wood tends to break apart from the screw, pushing those fibers of wood away from each other. You can, as I think I am going to attempt to do, glue it. Don't wait for the glue to dry. Make your pilot hole, make your pilot hole, sink your screw, and just let the whole thing dry like that. Now, I think I'm gonna actually do the pilot hole before I glue it in place. I will be able to see the pilot hole on top, which will be fine. So, goes here in the middle is approximately where I want it. You only need a very small hole, just enough to release the tension between the fibers of the wood. Now that I've made my pilot hole, I can see my pilot hole. I'm gonna spread a little wood glue on here. Doesn't have to be a whole lot. Enough. That's enough. Wipey, wipey. Don't worry, it won't dry the instant that you put it down. You have enough time to wipe your cap and get your wood back together. Maybe. Come on, get in there. There we go. All right. If the wood glue is squishing out the corners a bit, good. Good enough. Take your screw, put it on the pilot hole. Let it bite. Ooh. There we go. Come on. My bits aren't great. There we go. And now let that dry. I suggest 6 to 8 hours. You can wipe off the glue if you like. You can put some more glue on the cracks. You can paint it. You can sand it after the glue dries. There we go. That is a perfectly decent piece of scrap that was never meant for anything else, and now I'm going to put it to good use. Speaking of recycling, here's something my buddy Connor in Ireland sent me. This is a recycled container that was most likely a harvest container, what we'd see as harvest containers here in the United States. They may also be in your area as holding containers, as chemical containers. You may see them hanging out abandoned. You may see them on Facebook. If you go on Facebook and look in Marketplace for containers, you may find that these are there, and you can use them for planting, you can use them for composting, and if you have the tools, you can cut them apart and make beds out of them. 9 times out of 10, they're going to be made from plastic, and they're going to be awfully hard to cut. They do come in wood sometimes, however, if they're harvest containers, such as harvest containers for potatoes or beets. Here in the United States, you may see them with the label sugar beets on them. And frequently, they do get abandoned when they're just a little too rickety for use anymore. Another great idea. All right, it's time to start deciding how big I want these beds. I have a couple of options. I could use some of these. Now, that's pretty wide, and I'd rather use these in this position. I think what I'm gonna do is use this. How am I gonna use this? Well, very much like my smaller herb bed, I will just lace into these something to block up the holes. My best guess right now is probably old clothes. I can just rip up the old clothes, tie them in here, and they'll give me a decent short-term solution that will give me a bed of 1 or 2 of these. Probably 2. 2 seems like a decent length. So let's see. goodness. I do have plenty of them. About right there. Oh yeah. Looks like it'd do nicely. I like that a lot. And if it doesn't work, I can always cut wood to that length. Let's see. 1. 2. Either 2 or 3 of these would be nice. I've still got plenty of pallets to break down, so I should have enough to give me a really good sized bed. I've marked out the area simply by scraping enough dirt out of it of where I want to put the bed. Now, does it have to be absolutely perfect like this? No, it does not. Really, the only thing you need to be concerned with is where the wood is going to sit. If you want the wood to be level, you need to make sure to make the area where the wood sits level. That will make it much easier when you go to fill the bed up. Now, this is sitting on top of gravel. I'm not very concerned about it. If you have extremely soft dirt, you may want to consider putting a line of rocks, such as these, underneath the wood. This will help prevent the wood from settling down or messing around too much. And you'll wind up not having to mess with the bed too much once you've got it installed. All right, well, enough of this. It's back to watching paint dry. There are little arthropods. Nice soil. Perfect for a little plant. Pardon me, sage. Go. What's that? Oh, some kind of seed. Come along, little hollyhock. Woo! Look at them roots. Begging to be planted. Yay! Alright. Bit of a shovel. Don't have much time left. One out. Solid mass of roots. Nice. And a bit of a bark cover up for you. Yeah. Because I forgot there were dahlias there. There. Nice. I should get some more bark.